about hate. Let's talk about how the left uses the broad concept of hate. The accusations of hate speech, hate groups, of America as a nation of haters. The hate campaign is essential to the left's rationale for political repression. This is a witch hunt. This is an inquisition of heretics. Hater is the new heretic. And it's all built around the completely undefined and therefore completely Orwellian, totalitarian term of hate. The SPLC lists of hate groups and individuals are a major weapon in the left's unrestricted warfare against freedom of speech. That uses legal instruments, it uses economic and financial subversion, and it uses information war to eliminate conservatives by any means necessary. The SPLC directs or enables others to use that list, that hate group list, to attack conservative groups financially or censor them online, or to literally attack them, as in the case of the shootings at the Family Research Center, the shooting of Congressman Scalise and 3 others, or the Antifa and college attacks against SPLC blacklisted scholars like Charles Murray. So let's look at the hate campaign tactics. I'm a big fan of looking at exactly how your adversary operates. And this should be familiar to whoever's here in the SPLC. Thank you for helping make comments. The left in the last year has moved from so-called hate crimes to hate incidents, which require no underlying crime. And those include hate speech, and they include what they're calling now verbal hate, which is a euphemism for hate speech. They've created several online hate incident reporting mechanisms, which then provide so-called reports for the media echo chamber, and the tactic of these is to gather unverified anecdotes, count them up, and issue pseudo-statistical reports, which somehow always prove America is a hateful and dangerous place, which justify more limits on speech. And under this growing vigilante, left-wing, extra-legal witch hunt run and directed by the Southern Poverty Law Center and its partners, the police are discredited, mainstream conservative organizations are to be destroyed, and we are all guilty until we prove ourselves not innocent, but prove ourselves progressive by joining in the witch hunt to silence the free speech of our colleagues. So how do we know the SPLC is engaged in a campaign to destroy the groups it lists? Well, they say so. Mark Potok, their spokesman for 20 years, said in 2007, "I want to say plainly that our aim in life is to destroy these groups, completely destroy them." The next year, in 2008, he said, "We're not trying to change anybody's mind. We're trying to wreck the groups. We're trying to destroy them. As a political matter, to destroy them." And Potok's statements, which were widely circulated and quoted, were never repudiated by the SPLC. And which groups are they trying to destroy? So here goes. Let's see if this works. There we go. So I'm a donor to the SPLC, I want you to know, and I get their fundraisers. And these are very helpful. Richard Cohen, October 19th, 2017, a month and a half ago. Richard Cohen, SPLC president, most important thing, the FRC is the Family Research Council, said it's the mainstream groups. They're going after those who are more dangerous to our country than hate mongers who wear robes and hoods. So it's openly declared. The SPLC does a kind of bait and switch by associating fringe racist groups like the KKK and the Nazis with the organizations it's really after, the mainstream conservative groups. In ethical terms, we have a term for this. It's a systematic calumny, a false and defamatory statement in order to damage someone's reputation. In this case, a false association between mainstream policy groups and, as Cohen himself has said, the hate mongers who wear robes and hoods, by calling them all hate groups. And let's look at some examples of how they do this. Let's look at efforts to financially destroy mainstream conservative groups. In December 2016, the Chronicle of Philanthropy published a so-called study showing 55 nonprofit organizations had been blacklisted by the SPLC, suggesting that maybe their tax-deductible status should be questioned. It was a trial balloon, seeing how the idea of revoking charitable status from blacklisted conservative groups would play with the public. Think of it as the IRS Lois Lerner phenomenon, but on steroids and directed by the SPLC. That same month, December 2016, Soros Open Society Foundation announced a new grants program called Communities Against Hate. As of July 27th, 2017, they'd granted almost $6 million to 97 organizations, including over almost $400,000 to 4 local CARE chapters. The Southern Poverty Law Center serves as the strategic advisor to the program. In fact, the SPLC partnership with CARE is beginning to show up frequently and openly. The SPLC has been radicalizing, as have a lot of left-wing groups, as you know, since the 2016 election. And corporate partners who are coming in and giving money to the SPLC may need to look carefully at what they're funding because there's a reputational risk here and their brands are at risk. CARE was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation terrorism finance trial. You all know this, but we'll review it. Was created by the Muslim Brotherhood to support Hamas, was named a terrorist group recently by the United Arab Emirates, and the SPLC itself has been repudiated by the FBI, by the Department of Defense, and even under the Obama administration, it was reprimanded in 2016 for violating professional ethics. Let's look at another example of SPLC partnering with CARE. Let's see, I'm behind here. There we go. Documenting hate. So in early 2017, ProPublica puts up this online site where people can put in their own hate incidents and they're looking at news articles. Well, it's co-sponsored with Al Jazeera. Qatar's funded Al Jazeera's AJ Plus group, the SPLC, the Anti-Defamation League, and CARE. Documenting hate would later expand to a partnership with Google. So Google, guess what? That means your brand and your professional credibility is now inextricably associated with CARE and with Al Jazeera and with Hamas. By April 2017, we'd all remember GuideStar. GuideStar, which is known as the world's largest source of information on nonprofit organizations, was posting a banner at the websites of 46 organizations listed by the SPLC, stating that the organization was flagged as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, 2 months later, after outrage spread across the philanthropic profession, the flags were removed. And what they said June 23rd was, for the time being. And now we looked at their code at their website to find out just what they meant. Here's what they meant. If you see Alliance Defending Freedom, conservative group, the SPLC flag on the right there is true. That means that that's perpetually said as true. They can flip that blacklist list, a switch on and off. But if we look at the left-wing Institute for Policy Studies, their SPLC flag in the code is false. So they can obviously won't be switched back on. All it takes is basically one instruction to the code, and all those flags go right back up. Now, all of these efforts to cause financial harm are getting pushed back. Liberty Counsel, an SPLC blacklisted group, has sued GuideStar, right, for exactly using these banners under the Federal Lanham Act, as well as under Virginia state law violations of interference with business expectancy and defamation. And there's a parallel lawsuit, which I hope we'll hear a lot about because it is a terrific brief to read. Has been filed against Google by Dennis Prager, citing California laws, among various laws, on unfair practices. Other defamation lawsuits have been filed against the SPLC. Unrestricted warfare against organizations trying to take them out financially, it appears, violate a number of state and possibly federal laws. SPLC has gone too far. People are getting pushed back. Let's look at another effort that they did. Again, this is interesting from a technique point of view. Know the techniques of adversaries, know the techniques of the SPLC partners. This is an internal July 2017 manual that I found. It has instructions for the Google staff on how to downrank conservative groups so that they won't show up in search results. Now, they focus on blacklisted groups and reputation research. They cite the SPLC and ADL as sources to use when you're deciding who to downrank. We have another thing that happened shortly after that in August. Letters were sent out, many of you may be familiar with this, to every blacklisted mainstream organization. And the harassing tone speaks for itself. I think my favorite bit here is where they say, have you been shut down by other tech companies for being an alleged hate or extremist website? Which companies? Many people opposed to sites like yours are currently pressuring tech companies to cease their relationships with them. What is your view of this campaign? And the deadline, after people got this in the afternoon, was 5 p.m. that day to reply. Okay, here's a very recent one, went up a month and a half ago. Hate Crime Help. Hate Crime Help is a new co-venture launched again by SPLC, by CARE, by the Soros Communities Against Hate. This is beginning to be familiar, right? It's the same groups each time, only this time also the American Bar Association, to their shame. HateCrimeHelp.com. And what's fascinating in that, so if you look on the left here, you can see that the categories include violence, verbal hate, property damage, and harassment. Verbal hate's right up there under violence as a top thing to cite. And more, I think equally importantly, if you go over here on the right, if you have a category of hate incident, and of course this is hate incidents as well as hate crimes, even though it's called Hate Crime Help, more bait and switch, gender is only female. You are out of luck if you had a hate crime and you happen to be a gender male. Now, what's astounding is the American Bar Association is supporting this. Presumably, they no longer care a whole lot about equal protection under the law. Let's look at some of the pushback that's happening, because this is exciting, and this is something that we can all help on. And this is asymmetric responses to the tremendous power that the left has, to the $18 billion that Soros is now putting in. Money isn't everything. Heart is everything. So if we look, if we think about calumny, right? The left's strategic goal isn't just the calumny against the blacklisted groups. There's a longer goal here. It's against all of America. It's against the towns and the states and the counties that are listed every single year by the SPLC as centers of hate. Now they're beginning to push back. We know about the Clear Creek, Iowa example, which is great. They had been called a hate center because Daily Stormer theoretically had a book club there, never confirmed, at one meeting. SPLC refused to remove them from the hate map. Clear Creek tried several times. It took over a week of the city fathers, the police, the press, who were supportive of the effort, to get SPLC to stand down and to move it not, they didn't eliminate it, they moved it to the state. It is a great model. Iowa County Sheriff Rob Rotter denounced the claim that a hate group exists, stating that there's no neo-Nazi group in the county, and called the claims irresponsible at best. But you know what people don't realize is that there are other towns doing this, and a lot of them don't realize that they have peers around the country. They're doing it all on their own. Trenton and Wyandotte, both small towns in Michigan, were called centers of hate by the SPLC. Trenton, director of police, Wyandotte, director of police, said completely rejected the idea that there's a hate group operating within their cities. In Trenton, there was one guy apparently printing flyers and putting them on people's lawns. Everybody knew that this guy was sort of a little, off. And the police director said, an individual in an apartment with a copy machine does not accurately represent calling the entire town a KKK chapter locale. In Wyandotte, significant police resources were used to try and verify SPLC's accusation that a neo-Nazi group was there, only to find that it was an out-of-date post office box that had been listed on a website. Here's another one. This is my favorite. Gurnee, Illinois. Gurnee, Illinois, small town in Illinois, was labeled a hate center with a chapter of the KKK. Police Commander Brian Smith, an 18-year veteran of the force, began investigating locally. Couldn't find anything. He contacted the Illinois State Police Statewide Terrorism and Intelligence Center. They investigated using Illinois State Police resources. Couldn't find anything. Questioned the SPLC, first stonewalled them, finally got back to them early September, saying that the SPLC had listed Gurnee solely because someone had once listed his personal address at Gurnee when he registered online at a KKK website. So they said, great, give us the name. Gurnee police investigated the name, concluded there was no record of anyone by that name having ever been in the vicinity. It was a false name. Gurney officials asked the SPLC, please, look, take us off the list. This is silly. SPLC said, no, we can't do that. We only review the hate map once a year, so you're going to have to wait till January to have your designation reviewed. Even though only 2 weeks before, under pressure from Clear Creek, Iowa, they had removed them from the list. So we need to provide a means for America's towns and America's law enforcement locally to talk to each other, to be aware of these efforts. These are ones I picked up. It's over a month, that 4 examples, right? Who knows what else is out there? Who knows what's going on where law enforcement would say something, it's not hitting the media. We need to empower them. Now, one of the things that we can also do is when we ask them, whenever there's a list that comes out, the spring list, we can all go to our local towns, our local law enforcement, wherever we live, and we can ask them to investigate it. Is it true? Is it real? What's the proof? Ask SPLC. Right? Is it a flyer on a lawn? Is it a daily Stormer book club meeting that may have never happened? And we can also say to law enforcement and town fathers and electorate officials, get back to the SPLC because they are putting mainstream organizations on this list, and your city is not a hate center because you have a chapter of one of our organizations. The SPLC blacklists mainstream policy groups that support the police, that support enforcement of immigration laws, that support counterterrorism efforts and intelligent-led policing, that support traditional family values. These groups make our communities stronger, and we need to speak out in support of them, town by town, neighborhood by neighborhood. And I have one last suggestion. And this is for our SPLC representative, wherever they are, but it's also something that we can all do all the time, every time SPLC gets a new donation. And I mentioned I'm a donor to SPLC. I like some of what they do with, prison reform and so on, so it's sincere. I bear them no malice, even though the SPLC has publicly stated that it wants to destroy groups with which I'm associated. But we can help all of us, the SPLC, improve its financial ethics. SPLC does not submit an audit to the Better Business Bureau Wise Giving Program. And the reason for this, possibly, is that the SPLC could not pass the Better Business Bureau's standards, which require no more than 3 years of expenses to be kept in a bank account. Well, we all know the SPLC has well over $300 million in various bank accounts, including those nice ones down in the Cayman Islands. You can't just hoard money if you want to get a passing grade from the Better Business Bureau's Wise Giving Program. SPLC actually has $170 million and change excess funds that they have not put into their mission, which is to actually act as a poverty law center. They have not put that money, apparently, into their mission of helping, for example, people in the last 10 years who may now be in prison get legal aid. So I would suggest that every single time they get a new donation, every single time they report their tax returns on their 990s, take the opportunity to ask, show me the money. Show poor people the money. Every time they get a new million from Clooney or Apple or whoever, point out that this is time to stop the bait and switch on poor people, which is maybe the worst thing that the SPLC could do. So push back against the bullying, ask for the rule of law, ask for investigation of the left's accusations against your own towns and states, ask for the left to live up to their own values of helping the poor instead of hoarding the donations. Because if you don't ask, you don't get. And we can be demanding, we can go on the offense, and we can play this game to win. Thank you.